Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Forgotten Hockey Players of Broadway, a nostalgic look back at our favorite Rangers from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. I'm Tom Browning, along with my co-host Rob Berger. We can be heard on Google Play, iHeartRadio, YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, and of course, our website at gotommyboyproductions.libsyn.com. That's gotommyboyproductions.libsyn.com. Please check it out. You can capture all of our episodes on our webpage. You can contact us by just clicking on the contact bar. You can leave a message. We'd love to hear from you. Love to hear about the players that you would like for us to profile. Love to hear about maybe some of the seasons other than the 60s, 70s, and 80s that really made an impact on you as a fan. Again, we will be going off the menu every once in a while. We'll be talking about the current day New York Rangers, the state of the franchise, and again, we love to talk about previous playoff games, impactful trades that took place in New York Rangers history. So wherever you listen to us, please hit subscribe. It's free. So without further ado, here are your hosts, Tom Browning and Rob Berger. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Forgotten Hockey Players of Broadway. I'm Tom Browning, along with my great friend and co-host Rob Berger. Rob, how you doing today, bud?
I'm doing great. Hockey's in full swing.
Full swing. Hard to believe that we're a good month into the season already. Been a few surprises, as there usually are in the beginning of the season. Some surprise teams and teams we thought would not be doing all that great or doing great have not really gotten off to a real fast start. And I guess we'll start off with the Rangers, just to recap what has happened since our last show. What are your initial thoughts about how the Rangers have come out of the gate, albeit with very few games to play in the beginning stages of the schedule?
I think they look terrible. I mean, the offense has just been so disappointing there. And you know what? Their defense hasn't been so great either. And if you look at it from, even though I hate using this word this phrase, advanced stats, they're arguably the worst team in the Eastern Conference, even worse than Ottawa. Their possession numbers have not been good. They are allowing quality shots. Other teams are getting good shots. It's been strong performances from Lundqvist and Georgiev that have even kept them in anything, including Georgiev a couple nights ago against Tampa Bay.
Yeah, I think Georgiev has been outstanding. The Bulgarian beast has earned his stripes, and I think we've talked about this before. I think it's just a matter of time before Quinn will start giving him the lion's share of the games, especially if Lundqvist. I have to mildly disagree with you as far as Lundqvist's performance thus far. I think it's been average at best. His save percentage is well below that of Georgie, and Georgie has played, I think, some tougher teams, more talented, skilled teams, I believe. And I think it's just a matter of time. I think David Quinn is the perfect Rangers coach for this bunch. I really do. I think he's a meritocracy type of guy. He will bench veterans. He will bench rookies. The only coach, even Tortorella, as hard of an edge that he had, he very rarely would bench an established veteran on the Rangers. Vigneault, forget about it. He loved the veterans, despite poor quality of play. This is the guy I think is going to change the culture of the Rangers. He talks about it often. He doesn't hold back from the press, and he's looking for a hard-nosed group of players, and he's trying to establish that with these kids. And I think they played well the 2 out of the last 3 games. I think maybe the worm is turning a little bit, Rob. I think maybe they're starting to get it, because they know if they don't get it, they're not going to play, and they may even be sent down to Hartford.
Yeah, I mean, in particularly a first-round draft pick has just been tough to watch. I'm very surprised about how much Kakko has struggled this season.
Well, so has the kid on New Jersey too, right? I mean,
well, he's starting to heat up a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Larry Brooks had an article earlier this week. He compared Kakko to a couple other of the kids who came up in the last few years, and his ice time minutes are very similar, and production is very similar. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah, I did.
Does that change your attitude or feeling about?
No, I'd almost rather just see him get better ice time down in Hartford. I know it's not going to happen. That's not how we do things now. I just hope he grows, and it's not, and he gets quality action. I don't know why Elias Anderson isn't playing as much as he's definitely struggled at the start of the season, but I don't know if it's from due to his production or where he's playing on the ice and in what situations.
Yeah, I think they've made a decision on him. I think they probably realize, not that he's a bust yet, but I think they realize that they overrated this kid and that he's limited in what he can do. Would not be surprised if he winds up at Hartford just to get more ice time, just to get a little bit more seasoning. They're going to have to drop somebody when Zibanejad comes back. They're not going to do that with Hedel. Strome is playing very well. He's one of my favorites. I really like this kid. I really like Strome a lot. Howden is a real favorite of Quinn. He was a favorite of also Vigneault. So, I don't know. I think Howden's got his spot solidified. Strome. I wouldn't be surprised if Anderson gets sent down. But, to address what you said about the defense, Stahl needed to be benched long ago, and he was finally benched. The kids need time to develop. They really do. Brady Shea never panned out. He never turned out to be the player they thought, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's on the block or if he sits a little bit too, because he just has not produced. I think it's just a matter of time, Rob, before these guys start gelling. I think you'll see a lot better play from these kids November going into December, December going into January.
Yeah, I think so too. How soon are we going to see trades?
I don't know. A couple of these guys might be traded well before the trading deadline. I don't know. Maybe Kreider? I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I think Kreider's the only one that can really move. I mean, maybe Smith. This is the time. This is the year that you have to make moves, though, right? This team will not be competing for a wild card spot. I don't see it getting any better, even if Georgiev plays more minutes. This team is the way if they track how they are now, especially with Zibanejad banged up. Time to make some moves.
Yeah. Well, I can see Kreider being moved. Unfortunately, Lundqvist's salary, he's not the same player. Maybe he gets moved at the deadline if someone wants to take a flyer on him, if the Rangers pick up some of his salary. Smith, he's actually carved out a little bit of a niche for himself as a penalty-killing defenseman. He's a winger right on the fourth line right now, but he's kind of created a little niche. He's played very, very well. Quinn really loves his tough style, his rugged play, which is sorely lacking with most of the other kids. And he's been very effective as a penalty killer and as a swingman on defense and as a forward. So, I think he's created some value for himself with the club and maybe even with another club around the trade deadline. Stahl, his contract is just prohibitive. No one's going to pick his salary up, and he's just not a good player anymore. Yeah, they don't have a lot of assets that they can move. Maybe Jesper Fast. Maybe he's somebody they can move. Everyone loves him. Everyone seems to love him. Every coach seems to love this kid. I don't know, but I don't know if he can take a spot though of some of the youngsters that need the ice time. I was very disappointed in Kravtsov. This is his attitude down in Hartford. He wanted to go back to Russia. I know he's only 19 years old, but that was very disappointing. Very
disappointing. I still think he'll be back. I don't know if this is a situation like Radulov, someone like that, it took, almost 5 years to get him to be a regular NHL player. The only problem with guys like Radulov is they didn't do it with the teams that put up with the nonsense at the beginning of their career.
Yeah, I'm not so sure he's coming back, Rob. I got a feeling that this left a real bad taste in his mouth. Some kids just don't have the mental toughness. I got a feeling this kid's been pampered a lot down in Russia. He needed to check his ego out the door. Unlike Hedel, he just sulked. He had a bad attitude, scratched several times from the lineup down in Hartford. I don't know. I'm not so sure he's going to come back, and I think that's a real miss. That's a real...
He's only 19.
No, he's only 19, without a doubt.
So I think there's... I don't want to say he's out of it yet. I think he can turn it around. It's just the way things are looking, it probably won't be with the Rangers. I bring up Radulov because he came up and then played 9 games with the Predators and then was gone. Or played 2 seasons with the Predators, left, came back for 9 games, went back again to the KHL. And now we settled into 4 seasons back in the NHL, but with different teams after the Predators dealt with, him not living up to his potential.
Well, he was a far superior player, though, right? And he was not sent to the minor leagues, though. He just left without being sent down to their AHL team, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think he was more of an established veteran player in the KHL when he came over here, wasn't he?
No, he was a kid. He was a kid when he came over.
Okay.
He played in the Q.
Okay.
And then played a little bit in the AHL, and then, but yeah. So hopefully Kravtsov is back next year. Hopefully, someone talks to him back home. But I kind of agree with you. I'm not so optimistic.
No. And with Shesterkin playing the way he is, it's going to be very interesting. It is nice to see the Hartford team doing well. They haven't had a winning team in Hartford in forever. And at least last I heard, they were 8-0-1. Shesterkin has been unreal. And, I'll tell you, if I'm Quinn, and if this kid's ready to play and you got the Beast and you got Shesterkin, Lundqvist may have to swallow his pride. And, I know we disagree on the branding and the marketing with some of these veteran players, but, Quinn's job is to win games. Maybe it's time to move Lundqvist. Maybe if Lundqvist sees the handwriting on the wall, he says, you know what? It's time. I will accept the trade to a club that maybe was on his no trade list, or I know he's got a no trade clause. Maybe that's a decision around the first of the year that the Rangers are going to have to make. That should be interesting if this kid keeps on playing the way he is down in Hartford.
Yeah, they're not moving Lundqvist. As right as you may be, they're not moving Lundqvist.
Yeah, kind of the Eli phenomenon where they didn't move Eli either at the trade deadline. Any teams that are surprising you? It looks like the Islanders have their mojo back. Anybody else that seems to be a surprise?
San Jose Sharks. I did not think that they would be one of the lowest scoring teams in hockey. And for that matter, how much Joe Pavelski has struggled in Dallas. But, yeah, I'm surprised to see San Jose performing so badly. The Eastern, and Tampa Bay being off to this slow start they're at, the Buffalo Sabres, I don't think it's sustainable, but wow.
I know.
They have a fun team to watch. They still have significant holes on defense. They're starting to get into a situation with the Rangers too, with their goaltenders, with Hutton and Ullmark. Mm-hmm. Whereas maybe they're paying Hutton, but maybe Ullmark's the guy.
Yeah, that is an interesting situation there. But Buffalo had a similar start last year, didn't they? Didn't they get off to a flying start?
They did.
Yeah. Yeah, I think time will tell. I think with San Jose and Tampa Bay, I think they're mentally and physically fatigued, both of those teams. They've been in it for so many years, only to come up short time and time again. Veteran clubs. Tampa Bay may be a little bit younger, especially in goal, but I think they're a mentally tired team right now. I think both of them have just reached their point of no return and are due for maybe a little bit of a shakeup, whether it be in the coaching ranks or the players. I think that might be contributing to it.
Yes, I don't disagree with you.
So all right. Well, that's kind of a little bit of an update. The Bruins look great. That line continues to just bulldoze their way. I think the Bruins are set up for a very successful season. Blues have gotten off to a tough start. I guess they're still hungover from the Stanley Cup. But we'll see. It's interesting. It's only November, so we'll see how this plays out. But today's show, Rob, we're going to focus on the 1972 Stanley Cup Finals between the New York Rangers and the Boston Bruins. I was a 16-year-old kid at the time. Very excited about the Stanley Cup matchup. It was a year that, for most of 72, we Ranger fans thought this was the year that we were going to win the Cup. Jean Ratelle, the gag line, had an awesome, awesome season. Brad Park became the superstar, or added to his legacy as a superstar, second only to Bobby Orr. Edie Giacomin and Gilles Villemure had probably the best goaltending tandem in the league, and we were all very, very encouraged. The up-and-coming Rangers really had, they really blossomed. And this was the year that they were going to finally beat the Bruins. The last time they had played was 1929 Stanley Cup, the finals that the Bruins had won. But we thought that we were ready. But then, unfortunately, Ratelle got hurt. He didn't play well in the playoffs. He didn't play much in it. Well, he played, but he was not really all that effective in the playoffs. And we were kind of on pins and needles to see if the Rangers can still suck it up and, beat the big bad Bruins with Bobby Orr and Esposito and Cashman and Hodge and Johnny Busick and all those great players, Derek Sanderson. it got off to a very promising start. Actually, before that, the Rangers had to beat the defending Stanley Cup champions Montreal Canadiens, which they did in the first round. Then they beat the Blackhawks 4-0 in the second round. And the Bruins really had a tough way with the Maple Leafs, although they won in 5 games. All the games were very competitive, very physical. And then they crushed the St. Louis Blues. What were your thoughts, based on your research, on the playoffs before the two teams got to the finals?
Yeah, you bring up great points about the injuries and everything. And we were talking before how I could talk Bruins, Rangers. We could do a whole year of just talking about these two clubs. It's too bad they haven't got a chance to see each other more in the postseason, just how everything has come together.
Crying shame.
Such a great rivalry. And prior to that, especially prior to expansion, Bruins, Rangers was a bigger rivalry for a while than Bruins, Canadiens. May have been the best rivalry, one of the best rivalries in that group of 6. But yeah, both those teams came into, went through those playoffs. Not a big struggle, especially Boston. But, they were the best 2 teams in hockey that season. This is a different world of, I think if people who don't know hockey history go back and look at how the divisions lined up and how the playoffs worked, they'd be surprised, because not as simple as it is today. Or maybe at least as it was before the wild cards in the NHL. Also remarkable to talk about how before this season, how the playoffs were set up, where 2 played 4 and 1 played 3, and teams actually lost games so they could fall back to the 4 spot, so they could play the 2 seed instead of the 1 seed.
Interesting. Yeah, that is interesting. The Rangers Bruins were at the time today's Rangers Islanders. As a matter of fact, if Long Island never got an expansion team, I would venture to say that the Rangers Bruins would still be as intense of a rivalry today as it was back then. These two teams hated each other. And what added fuel to the fire was Brad Park's book, Play the Man, that came out in 1971, where he just destroyed the Bruins. I mean, he just excoriated, Esposito as being and Johnny McKenzie as being cheap shot artists, and Bobby Orr was protected by the animals on the team. That's the term Brad Park used.
Yeah.
Just destroying Boston Garden as being a grubby old arena, which it was. That it needed 2 coats of paint, at least 2 coats of paint. And, it was just one of those things where, Bobby Orr had this reputation as being a very gentlemanly player. But as Park said, and I can attest to it watching him, I mean, he was as much of a hatchet man as, Cashman and Hodge and Don Ory and Dallas Smith and all those guys, Teddy Green. I mean, he was just as bad as the rest of the club. They were called the Big Bad Bruins for a reason. And Don Sherry really, and Tom Johnson was the coach at the time. They never did anything to discourage that. They played in a tiny arena and they had big bodies and they just intimidated the other clubs. And they unfortunately they did intimidate the Rangers more times than not. So this was a highly anticipated finals. And when Game 1 opened in Boston Garden, it was, when Dale Rolfe scored that first goal, all Ranger fans were very excited that the Rangers were able to strike first in that game. Was very, very encouraging. But it didn't take long before the Bruins just, between shorthanded goals and power play goals, they just, that's what did the Rangers in. Edie Giacomin was very average as far as, Gilles Villemure played better. But Eddie did not really distinguish himself in this series, except for maybe Game 3. But, what are your thoughts on the beginning of the series? Anything come to mind?
Well, Edie Giacomin wasn't healthy.
That's right.
We got getting hurt against the Blackhawks, and I think that was a major disadvantage, especially in Game 1. In Game 1,
mm-hmm.
He wasn't. He didn't come back out he didn't start Game 2. The Rangers they never had a solid goaltending rotation for that series against the Bruins.
Neither the Bruins. Bruins went from Cheevers and Eddie Johnston. They didn't have. It was kind of similar as far as goaltending. Well, yeah, Giacomin hurt his right knee, I believe, against the Blackhawks. And if you watched him in that first game, he went down a lot. 2 or 3 of those goals, and he was known as a stand-up goalie, extremely athletic, but he just went down an awful lot. And, I mean, that last goal by Ace Bailey, which was a poor effort by Brad Park, when the Rangers stormed back to tie the game at 5 after being down 5-1. That was crushing. I mean, most Ranger fans thought, all right, we have to give up game 1 here. They were down 5-1, but they came storming back. And Ace Bailey makes that power move on Park. And Park didn't, he could have, his effort was far from what it should be. He should have muscled him off the puck. He couldn't do it. And then with one hand, he basically flipped the puck up in the top corner off a prone Edie Giacomin. Eddie went down way too quick on that with about 3 minutes to go. And the Bruins really stole game number 1, 6-5. But you can tell Giacomin wasn't right after that. You're right, after that first game.
No. And then, who knows how much that played into the rest of the series. From what I read, he struggled in game 4. He started game 5. He got pulled in game 5 also. So, I know, in today's NHL, goaltending is everything, and a hot goalie can win you a championship. So you have to wonder how much that impacted them, especially after in that game, deciding game when Cheevers still was shut out, and the Rangers, in those games they lost, weren't scoring a lot of goals. Right,
that's true. Cheevers and Eddie Johnston, their best games were better than the Rangers' best games. I mean, Rangers did not lose much when Gilles Villemure went in there. Remember, the two of them had won this the Vezina Trophy. If it wasn't that year, it might have been the year before. And they were both very, very good goalies. Jerry Cheevers had a 33-game unbeaten streak that year with the Bruins. So Eddie Johnston, although he was a good goaltender, was kind of recognized as the backup goalie. And I think Tom Johnson realized after that first game when the Rangers scored 5 goals, came storming back, that maybe he would try Eddie Johnston. And Eddie Johnston played well. In game number 2, only gave up 1 goal, and that was to Gilbert on a power play in the second period. Actually, it wasn't a power play. It was a even strength goal. And then, I think he played Johnston again in the first game at Madison Square Garden that the Rangers won. Cheevers played in game 3 at Madison Square. He went right after Johnston won game 2. I think Tom Johnson went to Jerry Cheevers in game 3, in which the Rangers won 5-2.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
And that was surprising because you'd think he would come back with Johnston in game 3 after he only gave up 1 goal the game before. But again, Cheevers gave up 5 goals this game also. The Rangers, Park had a couple of goals. I think the Rangers had 3 power play goals that game. And really, that was the most dominating game that the Rangers had, winning 5-2 at Madison Square Garden. And the next game, in game number 4, that's where Eddie Johnston came in again. Giacomin came back after playing reasonably well in game 3, only giving up 2 goals to the Bruins. One was to Bobby Orr, and one was to Mike Walton, who was a great pickup from the Maple Leafs earlier that season. And, Giacomin came in and lost a tough game 3-2 to Eddie Johnston. But here in 2 games, Johnston only gave up 3 goals. So you're right, Rob. The Bruins had better goaltending, especially in game 6 at Madison Square Garden. Villemure played well. Giacomin had his moments. But I think decisively the Bruins had better goaltending in that series.
Yeah, absolutely. And we hit on it a bit before. Huge loss for the Rangers not having a fully healthy Ratelle on the ice.
No doubt.
In fact, the only games he played in the playoffs were in the Stanley Cup final. Only recording 1 assist. And didn't really keep time on the ice numbers. For only goalies had time on the ice numbers at that point, the only stat. So really, to be 1 assist in 6 games with only 7 shots on net, that's huge.
Yeah, that was huge. And that's where I think we talked about before when we were talking about Vic Hadfield having his jersey raised in Madison Square Garden. I think the real difference, even though Esposito did not score a goal in that series, which was shocking, and Eddie Giacomin really had his number, Cashman and Hodge still gave Esposito the time and space. I don't know how many shots on goal that Esposito had, but he had a lot. And Hodge and Cashman were just physical dynamos in that series, and they just opened the ice up for not only Esposito, but also for Bobby Orr. And I think that's where Hadfield had to match Wayne Cashman in giving Rod Gilbert and especially Jean Ratelle the time and space he needed coming off that injury. Now, Gilbert had a great playoff, and he had a great final. He actually did. He was physical. He scored some clutch goals for the Rangers. So he really wasn't the problem. But in Boston Garden, Hadfield, I thought, needed to be a lot more physical, and he just didn't match Hodge or Cashman. And I thought that was decisive. I thought that was a deciding factor in the game, along with the goaltending difference between the two teams. Park played pretty well, except for that play against Ace Bailey in that first game, and also Park in game number, I think it was game number, where was it? Game number 5, I think it was, that the Rangers won. Park had there was a lousy line change by the Bruins, and Park had a 2-on-none breakaway, and he wound up hitting the post. I think that might have been game 2 when the Bruins went up 2-0. I think Park had that 2-1-none break and hit the goalpost. And, the talk in the papers was, Bobby Orr was finishing and Park wasn't. But Park went on to score some nice goals later on in that series, important goals. But that was a big difference. I thought Vic Hadfield not being as physical as Wayne Cashman and Kenny Hodge. Orr was just fantastic. And the Bruins penalty killing. I mean, they scored, I don't know how many shorthanded goals. I think they had 2 shorthanded goals in game number 1 against the Rangers. 2 on the same power play. Derek Sanderson and Kenny Hodge scored. So the Bruins really, if you look at the stats, they had a tremendous amount of shorthanded goals and power play goals. So special teams was also a big factor in that series.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is obviously isn't a surprise. Including in the pivotal game 6, where Bobby Orr spends 10 minutes in the box or arguing with a referee.
Yeah,
Rangers can't capitalize.
That was a big game. That game 6. I mean, the Rangers. I don't think many Ranger fans thought they had a shot, but the Rangers had gotten Bobby Russo earlier from the Montreal Canadiens. They had shipped Bob Nevenoff, the captain of the team, and for Bobby Rousseau in the Minnesota North Stars. And Rousseau really became a power play specialist for the Rangers that year. It was an ingredient that, other than Brad Park, they really didn't have a point guy that was really able to control the play and produce some offense on the power play. But he scored 2 goals in Game 6. It wasn't power play goals, but he had 2 clutch goals in Game 6 that propelled the Rangers to a comeback victory in that game. And that was huge. And then I think Game 6, that was televised on CBS, Dan Kelly did that game, who I thought was, next to Marv Albert, the greatest hockey announcer that I've in my lifetime. That was the loudest I've ever heard Madison Square Garden. Even louder than in '79 when they beat the Islanders. When the team took the ice for the beginning of Game 6, I've never heard Madison Square Garden that loud. It was just deafening. And that was back in the old days when the Rangers had, if not the loudest crowd in the National Hockey League, it was right up there in the top 2 or 3.
Oh, yeah. And let's not forget, Game 5 wasn't on TV.
It was locally, but you're right. It was not on nationally. But
national.
WOR had the game. Channel 9 had the game. I guess CBS took a risk on that one, huh?
Different time.
Yeah, I think they didn't want to bump Hawaii 5-0, which was a big show at that time. They took a risk. But, CBS took Game 6. And, Dan Kelly, he was just a great hockey announcer. Did you ever hear his son, Dan Jr., do the St. Louis Blues games?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Sounds just like his dad. Just like his dad. So that was an interesting series. And then obviously in Game 6, the Bruins won 3-0. Bobby Orr made that great play against Bruce McGregor. Now, Bruce McGregor, people forget that Bruce McGregor tried to poke the puck away from Orr at the point and try to score a shorthanded goal. But, Bruce McGregor made that same mistake in Game 2. And Orr made that same pirouette against Bruce McGregor in Game 2 that no one ever talks about. And he did it again in Game 6, and Orr burned him again and scored a goal. The Game 2, I believe it was Orr made that pirouette. He burned McGregor, and then he set up, I think it was Johnny Busick for the goal in Game 2 with that same move. But and then Cashman scored a couple of goals, one very late where he did his little Irish jig, which I'll never forget, which killed me to no end with about a minute and a half to go in a game. And seeing Johnny Busick, the Chief, carry that puck around, to carry the Stanley Cup around the Garden Ice was just too much for me. It was for Ranger fans.
Brutal.
But the Ranger fans gave them a standing ovation. And back in the day, because of, I guess, all the Rangers' failures in the playoffs, fans got used to applauding the Rangers whenever they were eliminated. And I could never figure it out. But they did again here, and they gave the Bruins a nice ovation when Busick carried the puck around. But it was a tough pill to swallow. There was a lot of what could have been if Jean Ratelle hadn't been hurt, if Giacomin hadn't been hurt. There was a lot of that. And They never got back there again for another 7 years until they played the Montreal Canadiens.
Nope. That's a whole other monster.
It really is. Any other thoughts? Anything else that you want to contribute to that Stanley Cup final?
Just, I think we'd be remiss to not point out that a couple of weeks ago, Ted Green from the Bruins passed away.
Yeah, he did.
A beloved member of that team, and we don't have time to get into now, but had that horrible stick swinging incident prior to the 1970 season where he missed the entire season.
Yeah, Wayne Mackey. But as Brad Park said in his book, you think Ted Green would have learned after that.
And he was so beloved by that Bruins team that his name made it on the Cup in 1970, even though he didn't play one game in the playoffs or regular season.
Interesting, yeah.
And he won a ton of APCO championships in the WHA with Winnipeg.
Yeah, and he coached the Rangers for a while. He was an assistant coach with the Rangers, as was Wayne Cashman. Funny how that worked out. And he was part of the Edmonton Oilers organization up until he passed away. Was he still active at 79 years old, or was he retired?
I'm pretty sure. I thought he was retired, but who knows? He could have had some kind of role with the team.
Well, another bit of news was, not so much news, but tidbit of trivia was Ace Bailey, who scored that decisive goal in Game 1, actually perished in that 9/11 plane crash in the Twin Towers as a scout for the L.A. Kings. As a matter of fact, he and another L.A. Kings scout perished in that in one of those flights that hit the building.
Yeah, Mark Bavis, and flights that they changed to get on.
Wow.
They moved up their flights. They changed their flights. They weren't initially going to be on that plane, which is a shame.
So Tom Johnson, he made the Hall of Fame as a coach, won a cup, and that was Bobby Orr's last Stanley Cup. They were eliminated, I believe, was the year after that. He had obviously his knee injuries took their toll, and then he wound up with the Blackhawks in '76. But that was the last cup he won. Yeah, it was a few years later. Esposito finds his way to the Big Apple, and Park and Ratelle go to Boston, and that Play the Man book by Brad Park is a very interesting book, and it tells a lot about the rivalry between the two clubs. If any of the fans out there who want to really get a good feel for how intense that rivalry was between Park and Orr and Rangers and Bruins, that's a good book to read. Any closing thoughts, Rob, before we end the podcast?
No, I don't. Hopefully we get some more Bruins Rangers moving forward. Hopefully the Rangers can improve things for us.
So in a few weeks we'll come up with a player. We haven't done a player in a while. We'll have to keep our thinking caps on and come up with a player from the 60s, 70s, or 80s that deserve a little bit of attention and a little profile. Thanks, Rob. I appreciate the podcast today, and looking forward to our next podcast in a few weeks. On behalf of Rob Berger, this is Tom Browning saying thanks again for tuning in for the Forgotten Hockey Players of Broadway. Thank you for listening. This has been a Go Tommy Boy production.